Hey guys, welcome to Troy Time. Hey, check it out. I am super excited to share this with you today. I've been waiting to put this out because it's something special. This is really something important to me. I hope you watch this whole video. There's something on here that I think you're really going to like, okay? It does with, it's going to deal with hydroponics and with your soil garden. It's plugged a lot of gaps and solved a lot of problems for me, and it's super simple, and it was there the whole time. I just needed to figure it out, which I did. So I'm going to share that with you today. Stay tuned. It's coming up next. Okay, guys, so let me tell you the deal, all right? Like I say, if you grow something like a kale or a pak choi or a red romaine or regular romaine, those are going to just jump right off this plate, and they're going to have a strong stem that sends them upward, okay? Other things that you grow, though, aren't going to have that, okay? So they're susceptible to falling over, and if they fall over, then they're usually going to stick, especially if you're using toilet paper as a net. Then they're usually going to stick, and it's usually going to be a bad day, and that plant's not going to make it. Okay, so that's been the problem, is that you could always germinate your strong upward growing crops on this, but it was more difficult. You could do it, but it was risky. The other crops that don't have such a strong upward drive, if you overwater it from the bottom, it'll flood them and they'll tip over. If you underwater it and they dry out, they'll wilt and they'll tip over. If you bump the tray, and a tidal wave will come and it'll knock them over. If you spray it too hard with a sprayer, then the wind and the pressure of the spray will knock them over. That's essentially what the medium was doing, was providing the plant support. And not all plants need that, but a lot of them did. And so in the past, I was using like a cocoa core or the clay pebbles and things like that. The cocoa core, the problem with the cocoa core is once nutrients touch it, it turns green and it's nasty, and then you can't reuse it. And the problem with the clay pebbles or the hydroton is that it's not good for germinating because all the seeds fall through it. And then also you have to clean them up afterwards, and both those materials can get expensive. And so I wanted to find a way where I could grow something with no medium whatsoever, so that I could just use what I had and not have to worry about continuing buying stuff, especially, supply chain issues and different things that we've experienced in the past. Because that's really when you want to be growing your food, is when it is hard to get things from the stores, right? So what I discovered was that, yes, certain plants will grow day 5, day 6, day 7, and then they fall over. So the trick is you have to harvest them before that time, or pluck them and put them in a new system, okay? But the problem is when they come out after that day, they only have a tiny little root structure. So it's like, what system can you put them in? Because normally you'd need, before you put them in a full-size system, you'd need like 3 inches of root. And these seeds are coming out with like a centimeter or less of root. And so most gardeners would say, yeah, that plant's not going to make it, right? But what I've discovered is there is a very simple way, using very simple things, that you can germinate those even soft growing seeds, let's call them, very early, and put them in another system where they're just going to thrive, okay? And that system's going to do a lot of other stuff for us, and I'm going to talk about that next. Okay, so here's a look at some romaine lettuce. You can tell how tall it is. It's got a very strong stem, right? It's just jumping off the plate. This is what I'm talking about. Here it is at just a couple days later. You can tell the paper towel is basically dissolved, and these things are starting to get, their true leaves. They're starting to grow. They're nice, okay? So here's pak choi doing the same thing. Just straight up, nice stem. And we've got some other, I think, red romaine in the background there. And and so the pak choi works great. Here's the red romaine in the background. Same thing, nice and tall, nice and strong. They can get knocked over, but generally they're pretty strong, pretty upright growers, okay? So as we're looking, this is about the size I would normally then harvest those things to put in a full-size system, okay? And you've seen these. It's usually pool noodles in different types of structures, whether it's totes or tubs or downspouts. Here's downspouts, right? But there's all sorts of things. Whether it's inside or outside, that system works great when they grow to that full size, and you can put them in a full-size container. The problem comes is when they don't make it to that full size in their germination tray. So we have 2 other systems, okay? So we're going to have what I'm calling a mini raft system, and then we're going to have a nursery. So this is what happens. So usually what'll happen is either, like I say, it'll get overwatered or underwatered or hit, and they'll get knocked over. Once they get knocked over like this, they're going to be stuck down. These are pepper plants, okay? Most of the time they're like this, most people are going to say, okay, those are done. Okay, they're just stuck down. There's almost nothing to them. They barely germinated. Most people would just throw this tray out. But I'm going to tell you, all these plants lived, okay, and they produce peppers, okay? And this is the mini raft system, because what you can do then, I'm going to show you, And these will just float right on a little raft, okay? And it works out awesome. So most people would look at a sprout like this and be like, yeah, that doesn't even have a centimeter for a root. And any gardener you talk to, they're going to say, yeah, that one's done. Throw it away, right? But no, you can stick it on these little rafts. So all you need to do, you cut the raft a certain shape, which we'll talk about. But then you have the leaf on the top, and then you have the root on the bottom, okay? So there's the leaf and there's the root on the bottom, and it works perfect. And you can slide them in here. You can put them on their own little raft, and it's great. You can use a different color pool noodle for different types of plants. You might have all your tomatoes on a red pool noodle. You might have all your cucumbers on a green pool noodle, okay? And they can stay in this tray for a long time, and it's got a lot of benefits, all right? So you can put all different kinds of them, and you can just stack them and let them grow, and they'll grow up great, okay? If they get too tall, then what you can do where they want to tip over, you just drape them over the side, all right? But right now, the main problem is that they're too tiny. So we're saving all those tiny little things that germinated. We're pulling them at about day 3, and then we're putting them in this mini raft system, okay? It's such a saving thing. It's awesome. It works really, really well. Okay, yeah. So that's the mini raft system, and it's awesome, guys. So let me tell you. So we finally solved it. So now we can germinate anything, and we don't have to use any medium, right? So that means no cost, no mess, no fuss, easy. Everything we're doing is with these pool noodles, right? So this is essentially like step 2, right, of a 4-step process. So I'm going to germinate everything on one of these, right? And then you've got the option of letting, just like in my last video, of letting it grow and keeping like your romaine lettuce and just growing it right on the plate. That's one option. And then super simple, if you're not going to do that and you're going to put it in other systems, you're just going to put it in a pool noodle system no matter what. It's super simple. So if the root is 3 inches or longer, you can stick it in a full-size system. If the root is more like 2 inches, we're going to stick it in a nursery system, which will be the next video, okay? But if the root is 1 inch or less, you're going to stick it in a floating tray. So it's that simple. So you germinate on one of these, and then you can either leave it on here, or if you're going to put it in another system, you just look at the root length, and then you just cut your pool noodle the right shape and put it in the right system, and you're good to go. So all you need is like this, and then a pool noodle, and then something to support your pool noodles. And it's so super clean, and it's reusable. Everything's clean, it's reusable. You just wipe it off and stick it right back in the system. There's no mold, there's no nothing, right? So on that tray, on the floating raft system, there's just a little bit of nutrients in the bottom, okay? And you can go a month and you'll have no algae or anything on the bottom. So let's look at some of these the benefits of this. You can't overwater this thing, right? Because they're rafts and they float. So if you pour tons of water in here, it just makes them float up to the top. Unlike one of these, if you overwater this, like I said, it's already going to cause that flooding, and they're going to tip over the germination. In the mini raft system, once you germinate them on the mesh in the mini raft system, you can't overwater them. You really can't underwater them either, because you can see the raft. You can see where the water is. It's obvious when there's no water on the bottom, and they'll just go down and stick, and you'll say like, oh, I got to put some water in there. It's a little harder to tell when you got the mesh tray on there or in some of these other systems. So you can't underwater it, you can't overwater it, okay? Also, the mesh tray has a maximum growth to it, okay? At a certain point, let's call it 21 days or 3 weeks or so, roughly in there, it depends on the plant, it's no longer going to be able to extract the plant from there. If you're growing like romaine lettuce, let's say day 21, if you wanted to put that in another system, it's kind of too late, because all the roots are going to be intertwined with the plant next to it, and they're going to be stuck on the mesh. So when you go to pull it out, you're going to pull out all the roots and everything with it, and it's not going to be a viable transfer, okay? So you can just leave it on the tray and continue to grow it. But if you're going to transfer it to another system, usually you want to do that before, let's say, day 21, okay? But on your mini raft system, there is no maximum. I tell you, I've had a 2-foot tomato sitting in here, and yeah, it wants to tip over, but I just rested it on the container next to it. So I've had a 2-foot cucumber sitting here for a week while I was waiting to put it out in my hydroponic garden outside. It did fine. So I just stuck it on a big raft and I put it in there, and just like the normal cracky, you have some of the roots in the water and some of the roots in the air for an air root, and it worked out great. It lived fine. And then I stuck it a week later, I stuck it out in my outside garden. I've had cucumbers that were 1.5 feet in the root system. Same thing. Just drape it over the side. Okay, and you can use any plate. You don't have to use this green. I usually use the green bottoms, but sometimes if I've got taller seeds, like let's say I've got a bunch of seeds I've got to get out of the lettuce, and I've got to get them out of this before I meet their maximum day. So I pull them out. Well, now I've got these tall lettuces. So what I'll use is a tub. I'll use a little white tub from Target, and it's got edges about like this. So I'll float my raft, and then I'll just lean the plants over the edge of the tub. It works out awesome. They can sit in there for a week. They can sit in there for a long while. These floating rafts don't really have an upper limit. Like I say, I've had that 2-foot tomato plant sitting in there. I've had a tomato plant. I started in one of these that got a foot and a half or whatever, and it wraps into the little boat, and then you just pluck the boat off when it's time to stick it in your garden. You could stick it in the soil, or you could stick it in a hydroponic garden, or leave the little piece of pool noodle on there. It's not going to hurt anything, but there is no maximum to it. Okay, and really, it's hard to get a minimum. So unlike moving it into like the nursery system, which I'll show you next, or the full-size system, you need at least like a 2-inch root to get to the nursery system and like a 3-inch root to get to the full-size system. So what you have is just a 3 progression of pool noodle structures after you germinate on this white mesh tray. It works out awesome. It's an awesome system. So like I say, I germinate every single thing except for potatoes, because we don't do potatoes, because you do them from a seed potato, obviously. But everything else in the garden, whether it's hydroponic or soil garden, I germinate on these trays. And then I pull them out, and that's the other benefit. It gives you an option of time. So if I'm just trying to buy time, I've put big plants on here. I've pulled a indoor hydroponic tomato plant, and a cucumber plant for that matter, out of a full-size system indoors and just stuck it on the plate while I was waiting to put it out in the soil garden. So I've gained time. Maybe it was raining, or maybe the receptacle I had outside wasn't ready to accept it yet, or what have you. Now I've buffered myself a lot more time with my gardening. I'll just stick it on my floating raft, and I'll leave it there until I have the time as a gardener to go spend the time to go stick it in another one, or build another container tray up, or what have you, right? So it's helpful for time. It's helpful for your larger plants. It's helpful, like I've taken stuff out of a nursery. The nursery we'll talk about in the next video, but it has an upper limit as well, because if there's only a certain size hole, and if the roots get too big, then they won't pull through that hole anymore. So they've got to come out of the nursery at some point as well. So sometimes I've taken them out of the nursery, which I would consider kind of step 3. I consider this step 1. I consider the floating raft, the mini floating raft, step 2, the nursery step 3, and then the full-size container step 4. But you won't always go through all 4. Sometimes you go like from your lettuce, right from your mesh tray, right to your full size, right? Like if it's romaine. But you can go back and forth between them. Sometimes I pulled something out of my nursery and I've ripped some of the roots out where there's not much roots left. So I've stuck it back into the floating raft tray, kind of give it another week or so to get some better roots on it, and then I've taken it back out and put it in the full-size stuff. So that floating mini rafts, I should say, just is so versatile. It's so good. Even if you're just a soil gardener and you've got a problem where you want to use it in that sort of first aid kind of way, you don't necessarily need nutrients. If you can put just water in the tray for 2 or 3 days, they're not going to like it too much after about 3 days because they're not getting any nutrients. But generally, the nutrients are the way to go, especially if you're trying to help out with like first aid the plant when it's been damaged or something like that. But yeah, so it makes just such a complete system, and the beauty of it again. I hope you appreciate it. No medium, so you're not buying anything. You're not cleaning up a bunch of stuff. The only thing you're ever doing is really wiping off these trays, and they just wipe right off. So it's just simple. It's easy. There's not much cost. You've already got the pool noodles on hand because you're using them in the other systems. So for me, discovering sort of that mini raft system was huge. It gives you more time. You've already got the materials on hand. All you got to do is pull it out of your germination thing and then put it in whatever system makes sense. It's so simple. So if it's got a short root, again, it goes in your mini rafts. If it's got a medium root, it goes in your nursery. And if it's got a long root, it can go right back into your full-size system. So simple, so easy, and it solves so many problems for me. And so I wanted to pass that on. I hope you can appreciate it because it blew my mind how simple it was. I lost a lot of plants trying to get them to germinate with no medium, right? Because there's no support structure. But just pull them early and stick them right in that mini raft system. It works out awesome. Then you got all the time in the world. They can sit there for weeks, and you're just like, okay, well, I'll get to it when I can get to it, and I'll put them in whatever system I want, right? So super excited about it. I hope you can kind of tell from my intensity. Man, this is something that's just so valuable. I hope you can appreciate it. I don't know if it's going to come through. If you haven't done a lot of hydroponics, you might not understand. But man, I love the little mini rafts. I'm using them all the time now. So simple. You can harvest some of them and not others. You can put stuff in after there's already stuff in there. You can organize it with different colors of pool noodles. Just so many great things about it. So I think I remembered most of them, and if not, then I'll talk about it in the next video. Next video is going to talk about the nursery, which is kind of step 3, all right? And then the following video obviously will be more on the full size. So you kind of just, again, to summarize, super simple. I germinate everything on here. Look at the root size. Tiny little root, bam, mini raft system. Medium root, bam, nursery. Long root, bam, full size system. Good to go. You've got something for any plant in any stage. Totally easy, totally clean, no medium. Beautiful. So that's my spiel for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know down below what you think. I don't think anyone's ever seen this before. I certainly haven't seen it. I've seen things a little close, maybe, but not exactly what I'm talking about here. So hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments. Say hi. Tell me where you're from. This is Troy time. Take care.